We are the Diablo 3 podcast. We're online at DiabloIncGamers.com. This is Flux at Blizzcon 2014. I am in a small room with a large developer. I'm with Travis Day. Sorry. Lawrence Day? What happened to your name?
No, Travis Day's right. Every year they get this wrong.
So you are Travis Day.
Yeah.
And can you give us your job description on the game?
Yeah, I'm a systems designer on Diablo 3. I do a lot of work with classes and items and game balance.
What have you been doing in the last 12 months or so?
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Lots of things. Are you one of the class pilots?
I've been slowly aging.
Yes.
For the last 12 months. I've been focusing a lot on, we did patch 2.1 recently. Legendary gems, I spent a tremendous amount of time working on those. Got married and went on my honeymoon. And
is that in the game or that's in real life?
In the game.
It's not. This isn't WoW. We don't have marriages in the game.
No. I got married and was on my honeymoon during our patch 2.1 PTR. And recently I've been working on 2.1.2, ancient items, and a lot of the things we're going to show off tomorrow.
What was your favorite legendary gem? You said you were working on them.
Oh man, my favorite. I think my favorite is Boon of the Hoarder.
That's everyone's favorite.
Yeah,
we just ran a vote recently, and that came in number one.
I'm not surprised.
Even though you see these threads, people saying there's too much gold, there's no reason to use gold, and then Boon of the Hoarder is the most popular gem.
Right.
People just love the shiny, and of course, the level 25 bonus you get to run really fast.
Oh yeah, it's definitely my favorite. The first time I equipped it, and I don't even remember what I was killing. I was killing a pack of swarmer mobs, and my screen just exploded in gold, and I just chuckled at myself and was like, this is amazing.
And it makes you play terrible areas. Like you go to the ruins of Corvus in Act 5, just because there's so many little scarabs, and it's just anywhere. I was playing the spider caves when I first got that. I'm like, everyone hates it's like the least fun bounty in Act 1, but there's so many little spiders. Gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of legendary gems, that was a whole question I had here about new ones, because there's no defensive ones now. But of course, the panel just covered that. You had the big, the one that does resistance, and the other one does massive regeneration.
Yeah.
So obviously, you guys looked at the fact that there are currently 2 legendary gems that are defensive, and they're like the least popular gems.
Yeah, they are. And we always try to iterate. We're always trying to find interesting ways to add new items to the game. Gems are just the newest feature. And since they're a newest feature, the first round that we sort of created and sent out with patch 2.1, there was a lot of question marks, like, we're not really sure. We knew things like Moratorium would probably be less popular than things like Bane of the Powerful. But we made them anyways. We're like, well, even if only hardcore players use them, right? Like, we still need options.
Well, hardcore players don't use them, though.
Which I know.
I play hardcore, so
it's like, hilarious. Yeah. But yeah, we've definitely sat down and go, well, the thing people ask us for the most has been like healing and defensive gems, which is great because it's kind of amazing when our players are actually like, yeah, we want more tanky things, because for years it's just been like, oh, no one cares about tanking and healing.
Yeah.
I think Greater Riffs help sort of reframe people's mindset about needing those things.
Yeah, I was surprised that none of them have the whole resurrect upon death power, because every class has that now but the Barbarian, and there's really very few Barbarians at high level Riffs in hardcore especially, because Crusader's got 2, and there's 2 forms of save you if you die, and the Barbers and Avenging it. I thought a legendary gem would certainly get one of those, but not yet.
We haven't talked about that. It's not beyond the realm of possibility.
Is it because Blizzard hates Barbarians?
We love Barbarians. I actually played a Barbarian myself quite extensively for a long time. I
was like, whichever class isn't currently the most powerful, everyone hates it. Because obviously you guys love the Barbarian best for like a year and a half in Diablo 3 Vanilla.
I think we just didn't patch as much as we could have to maybe try to normalize the playing field. So there was a long stretch of time where Barbs were definitely the best. And I don't know, I enjoyed it thoroughly personally.
Yeah. So jumping around to some different topics, just because I have a lot of the most popular questions. Someone mentioned this right as the panel was ending, one of the audience questions. More stash space. Everyone wants more stash space, more character slots. You added 1 in the last patch. People constantly say, I would be so happy to pay microtransactions, pay $5 just to buy another stash tab or something. And you guys had the whole Real Money Auction House, which was supposed to be an ongoing source of funding. And there were all these quotes about, we're not going to be Diablo 2, we're not going to run the servers for free for 10 years again. And now you're running the servers for free for 10 years again, at least for the last year or so, since the RMH. So have you guys considered microtransactions?
The stash space, so do you want to know about stash space, or do you want to know about microtransactions?
Yes.
Because those aren't the same thing.
Well, stash space.
We have a lot of, stash space comes up a lot. It's something we discuss on a regular basis. I've said before myself, like, I would totally pay to have more stash tabs, but honestly, that's definitely when I'm in my player shoes. When I'm in my designer shoes, we talk about it a lot, and we say stash space is pretty much going to always be something people want. If we give them 2 more tabs, 5 more tabs, however many tabs we give people, they're going to fill those, and they're going to say, I still need more. So what we've been trying to figure out instead recently is, instead of just saying how do we give you more stash tabs, it's how can we help you better manage your stash? How can we remove some of the need you have to feel like you're saving all these things? In cases like crafting materials, we've been discussing, like maybe we make crafting materials something that's easier to store. Maybe we find reasons for you to take the things that you are keeping and get rid of them. So that's been more our focus as of recently. And not just that, there's just physical reasons we can't, in terms of how much, we call them actors, but how many items are in our game and how much it's storing in memory at any given time. If we do almost any more than we have now, the game just physically can't keep up with it.
People often complain, especially in hardcore, because you got to keep spare gear in case you die and wipe. And plus, you guys have made so much more customization of items now, where you get individual skill bonuses and individual, times of elemental damage on stuff. Usually in D3V, there was a lot more overlap. The same armor could be used on every class. And obviously main stat was different, but now it's just gotten much more specialized. And people are like, we need more space, and you're just saying maybe you realize everyone wants that, but it's just not as easy as.
There are a lot of technical limitations to it beyond just. The one that comes up a lot is, what if you just pay and let us pay? You can use money to buy storage. And we're like, well, okay, one, even if we did that, that's not necessarily the right fix or the right approach to the feedback of I want more stash space. And two, there are a lot of just technical reasons we wouldn't do that or couldn't do that. So instead, we are trying to figure out how to give you more ways to get rid of things and feel good about it in the process.
So this question will continue. Then I'm sure I'll be asking you guys this next year.
You probably. Well, no, I think by next year, I'm sure you'll have seen some changes.
So trading. Obviously, pretty much everything is bind on account now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And except you can trade legendaries in the same game. And there's constantly. I run a couple of big clans on US and EU, and they're full. And everyone's always, how come we can't have trading in clans? Make it. You have to be in the clan for 30 days. So you can't just join up to buy stuff or trade stuff. Have you guys considered expanding trading in other clan interactions?
We're happy with the way trading is right now. This is feedback that we get a lot. Actually, I think.
I'm asking you the most popular questions.
Oh, so, absolutely. I think yesterday someone at the bar was asking me this too, and I was giving them the same answer, which is we really, when we took trading and basically restricted it as much as we had to help make the game the best it could be, it was something that I use an anecdote a lot, and when we were having the conversations about if we were going to have trading and what was going to happen if we took it out, I used to have anecdotes all the time about, in D2, my buddy would join my game, and he'd throw all these items on the ground, and then he'd leave. Yeah. And then I'd go, sweet, and pick up all these items. I'm like, hooray! And then that moment of altruism on his behalf and that moment of excitement basically just truncated all future finding of items for me. So even though it's something that comes up a lot in the form of like, but what if you safeguard it? And what if it's 30 days on my friend list or only my guild? The reasons we got rid of it a lot were also to protect the players, right? We want to protect the players from bots, scammers, from people who would try to take their credit card info. Any trading that is available at all will open the door to black market sites. And ultimately, you still can. You can trade in the scenarios that matter, which is, if you're playing with your wife or your brother or your son, anyone is, you can go, hey, I found this really cool thing. Here you go, and give it to them. So we feel that the trading rules we have right now are both best for the game, but also really help reinforce the co-op experience that we want players to be having.
Okay. Difficulty. There's a lot of questions. There was nothing in the panel about adding more difficulty levels or doing things at the highest level of builds. I mean, people are often saying, why don't we have Torment 7 through 10 or something like that? People who are really well geared, it's equivalent to what, a Greater Rift 25 or so is Torment 6.
Yeah.
And there's people who just farm, T6 now Riffs in, 3-4 minutes just over and over again. And it's zero challenge. And they're like, obviously you guys want Greater Rifts to be kind of the highest level of difficulty and content. But it seems that T6 has become pretty pointless for a lot of well-geared characters. Have you guys thought about having higher levels of Torment?
Increased difficulties comes up sometimes. We've talked about it around the office. We don't have any plans to do anything of that nature right now. When we do talk about this, usually we talk about what we want the sort of cadence of the gameplay to feel like, how we don't think the game is at its best if someone's playing at the highest difficulty possible for extended periods of time. Which is why, for example, Greater Rifts you have to work your way up and then start at a lower tier and work your way up each time. We feel like the game's better when there's peaks and valleys, right? Like when you're compressing and trying really hard and then you just kind of unwind. And we feel like Tier 6 or regular Rifts are sort of that right now. They're filling that purpose for the really advanced players. And Greater Rifts are really meant to serve the difficulty challenge. And we don't want to really muddy that water.
Speaking of Greater Rifts, the other main question, some people hate waves. They hate Realm of Trials. Unless you're a Sentry Demon Hunter, in which case you love it, and it's just the easiest thing in the world. And some builds just aren't made for it. And there's constant questions. I'm sure you've seen them. Why can't we just start on the last Rift? I mean, that kind of usurps the whole point of Ursi, where you have to choose between upgrading your gem or upgrading.
Yeah, absolutely.
But people constantly say, I have friends who I'm on the podcast regularly who are like, I can do up to 38 with my Crusader, but I can only do wave 31, and then I've got to grind through 6 waves and take an hour and a half to get there, unless I party with some Demon Hunters, which case I can start off on 40 immediately. Is that a concern for you guys? You like how the system's working, the balance between waves and Rifts?
I think Rifts, the trials are something that we're still iterating on. Excuse me. It's something that we talk about a lot at the office. There are some changes going in I think patch 2.12 to trials and how they set up to sort of help make them more rewarding, and also to sort of take some of the more frustrating things out of them. People talk a lot about like the ability to pull some of the monsters, right? Like with piranhas or Cyclone Strike, etc. I think last week we were making the change to allow you to pull all the monsters in the trials. But we've had a lot of talks fundamentally about, well, how often should people need to do trials? Why not? This is something that we know we want to change, but we don't necessarily know what we want to do yet. The analogy I use whenever Wyatt and I are discussing this is like, okay, trials are here for a good reason. We want you to not have to clear 1 through 30 every time, right? So like, this is why we have trials. They're serving a very good purpose. They can be a little bit of a point of friction for people who want to just do a lot of Greater Rifts in a row. But at the same time, it's like if I go to a ride and they take out a measuring stick and say, you must be this tall, the second time I come through the line, they don't ask me to measure myself again, and the third time, and the fourth time. So it's something that we want to try to figure out how to probably reduce the amount that players need to do trials.
Maybe you get
but
multiple
probably
keys
not like
each
remove
time
entirely.
Or something.
That's an idea we've talked about. Like maybe you do a trial, and the trial will give you up to 5 or 10 keys at the end, based on however many you want to give Urshi.
Could they pop all over the level? You can run over and pick them up, because that would be very appropriate for the game.
I don't know that would be as fun as you're thinking.
Could be a trial goblin, maybe, and he runs around dropping trial keys.
Punch trial goblins in the head.
We need more goblins, right? So.
Yeah, goblins are awesome.
So something that's been mentioned a couple of times recently by some of the devs was bounty improvements. Because people do adventure mode. Obviously, that was covered in the panel, and the whole thing was basically new maps and new map layouts, which is cool. But people are often saying, "Why can't I do bounties?" People always say, "Why can't I do if I do all 25 bounties in the same game? I get like a bigger bonus." And you get like nobody does Act 5 unless you're a Demon Hunter and you want that one Hell Trapper bow, and nobody does Act 2 bounties anymore. Everyone just does Act 1 and Riffs endlessly.
A lot of it, yeah.
And people are like, "Why can't we put the Ring of Royal Grandeur in Act 5 or something like that?" Have you guys have ideas about how to make bounties more viable?
So I don't think bounties are not valuable. I think that they're really good. They have a very distinct purpose also in the game. I would say that when we talk about this at the office, generally my opinion on the topic is bounties are more or less cool the way they are. The biggest problem is that in the last changes in patch 2.1, where we changed the way that you open the obelisk with how many keys a player needs, we used to go from requiring 5 keys to requiring 1 key per player. 1 key per player was better because I got everyone invested. You didn't just stand around in a public game going, who's going to open it? And then people join and leave and no one opens it. But the downside of that is if you're a solo player or you're a hardcore player with a couple buddies, you don't use keys nearly as often as you used to. So you used to do like a full set of bounties to do 1 Greater Rift. Now if you do a full set of bounties, you can do 5 Greater Rifts. So it's really just shifted the focus purely because we undercosted keys now. So it's something we talk about a lot, like do we raise the key cost back up? Do we do something else to try to get people to do bounties? But ultimately I think that between the bounty bag legendaries and the need to get keys sometimes, I think bounties are less fun than Rifts. So I don't think we really want the focus of the game to be on bounties in the first place.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's certainly something that we discuss. We just don't have necessarily a decision on what we want to do with it yet.
I'm sure you guys have server stats, but I mean, people I see playing in the clan, it's 99% just do Act 1. Because everybody, Ring of Royal Grandeur, you can always hope to
Everybody
get
wants Ring of Royal Grandeur, yeah.
But it's so the incentives are so different. Of course, Act 1 also was the easiest and generally the fastest.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems there's a real imbalance between Act 1 and the other acts, especially on that.
Yeah, and people have suggested things like, why don't you just move Ring of Grandeur to Act 5? And then it's like, well, yeah, but then we're just moving the problem that everyone's talking about. Like, now you just do Act 5. So there's no plans to do anything of that nature. If anything, we would look at it on the key front or potentially increasing the diversity or the rewards. But again, something we haven't entirely nailed down yet.
Question you guys didn't get to in the panel, anything I saw, was build viability. You know, obviously there's certain builds, you know, the M6 Demon Hunter, and there's the charging Barbarian and stuff that are super. It seems kind of like in the game now, if you have good gear, you can kind of do any skills you want and get to like Greater Rift 25 or 30. And then there's like there's maybe 2 or 3 builds to like 35, and then above that there's 1 build per class, and sometimes no builds per class. And are you guys thinking more about, so like when you balance, like, you know, you have this awesome new multi-shot build for the Demon Hunter, and the Barb's got an in the demo here, the set build. And my friend who's here with me at the show is playing the Wizard. All he plays are Wizards.
Right.
And he was so stoked with the whole slow time builds now. And are you planning, when you're designing these builds, you're like, this is going to compete with, you know, Firebirds kind of thing at the highest levels? Is the Barb meant to be like, you know, Greater Rift 45 for Barbs, or are you just sort of like, this is pretty good, and you're not worried about having multiple builds at the very highest level?
Oh, no, diversity is something that's hugely important to us. We want classes to have multiple builds. Really a big part of my focus when we're sitting down designing new items or new sets like the ones in the demo is just coming up with what are really cool play styles that we want to reinforce and embrace, and what do we have to do to make that play style as good as the best thing this class can do. Like, how do we take a multi-shot build, like a loose idea, and go, all right, we're going to make that as good as M6, or we're going to make this slow time build as good as Firebirds. So that's definitely our priority, is always trying to find ways to like prop up builds that players want to do, but at the end game can't necessarily do. That sound system is crazy.
Yeah, there's this wild vibrating sound. I don't know if you can hear it on the audio, guys, but yes, it's interesting. It sounds like someone's landing a helicopter upstairs. So related to that, in terms of items, obviously legendary items and those new sets enable new skills, and that's something people are always saying. You know, Season 1 had a few new legendaries that enabled. You know, this is obviously this. As you guys have kind of talked about in the past, you want to enable other skills via items. You don't want to just buff the skill 600%. You want to have, here's this item that buffs the skill 500%, and then it works it out. And people are like, why don't we have every legendary item in the game with a cool skill on it right now? And the plan is just, you can't design 1,000 new ones that quickly, and it seems like you just want to do a dozen or so each season and just sort of continue to add new stuff gradually.
The plan is just to continue retrofitting old content and creating new content.
Why don't you make every legendary really cool in the next patch?
If there were more of me, I would totally do that. It's purely just a matter of how much we can get done at any given time in any given patch. Our focus really is on trying to get items that don't have powers, cool powers, also adding cool new items to every season, and then on top of that adding cool new items to every major content patch for non-seasonal players. So we're adding as much content as we can get in, and we're pretty happy with what we have right now. It's just going to take a while before they're all really awesome, but that's the eventual goal.
And that reminds me of the whole ancient items thing that was in the panel, which is existing legendaries that have, up to 30% better stats?
Up to, yeah.
So are those they said those would be more droppable, well said, those would drop more frequently on higher torments. Do you have any idea how often? You're not only going to find ancient items, you're going to find, Gear of Gungo or whatever it was one of them. You're going to find that, 9 out of 10 is going to be the regular one, and then 1 out of 10 is the ancient one?
Yeah, about that actually. The numbers, clearly, we're still going to have to tune more once it goes to PTR. Roughly the ratio right now is Torment 6, anytime you get a legendary, 10% chance it can be an ancient item.
Yeah.
That includes from crafting or Kadala or world drops or anything of that nature. So that number may go up, may go down, we don't know yet. But right now that's, 9 to 1 is about exactly right.
Wow, imagine I just pulled that out of the sky.
Good job.
That's why I'm on the team.
You're sentient.
So, do they look differently? Do you get the same beam and everything and know until you ID it?
That's the idea, yeah.
So a little bit of excitement when you're IDing then.
Yeah, it's meant to sort of preserve some of that anticipation. And really, ancient items are meant to they're meant to serve the players who want to play the game a considerable amount, but that we don't necessarily want rates for. We want our game to be as accessible to all of our players as possible, and our drop rates really reflect that, right? Like, I think I started my seasonal monk, and within a week and a half had like surpassed my crusader from Ship of ROS, because it's just drop rates are insanely high now. Kadal is really rewarding, and that was cool. I'm like, this is great. I love that, you know, I can do this, have fun with a brand new character. But man, I really do wish there was something that I could still want, because I've got everything already. Like 2 weeks in, I've got everything. And ancient items are really meant for the people like me, or any of our streamers, or you who play a considerable amount of Diablo 3 and want the next awesome thing to find.
Well, that's like hardcore, so I have a way to recycle my gear.
Well, then there you go. You're always finding cool new items.
Yeah, unfortunately, like it or not. So that came up in the panel also, the whole sense of you're replacing all your same gear, but you guys are adding more stuff in the seasons too, so there's new gear you can look forward to. It seems like everybody has their own favorite skill. Like I saw a number of people say they love Strafe as a demon hunter, and they want an item that makes basically what that new set does for a multi-shot. And do you guys have do you throw darts at a board in the office? How do you decide? Everyone, like say you're the monk fan or something. It's like there's the new bracers that make explosive palm chain, right? So if someone's like explosive palm's the coolest monk skill, it's not viable. How can we make that cool? Like how you decide which one? Like how is multi-shot decided upon? Did John Yang get to decide because he's the big demon hunter guy now, or what?
No, that's definitely something. Actually, multi-shot specifically, that's one that Kevin Martins has been asking us to do for months. He's like, make a multi-shot bow, make a multi-shot bow. I was like, how about we make a multi-shot set?
Yeah.
And I talk about this some on the panel tomorrow, but a lot of that comes from the fact that currently demon hunters their best set isn't necessarily the most engaging, and we wanted to definitely get them back to a place where you shoot things in the face with your arrows. Like that's how you play the demon hunter. So when we were working out the new set, we were like, okay, we're going to use your bow. It's going to be at least as good as Marauders, if not better. And, that's generally our approach to, like, how we come up with cool new items. Is like, well, what are the viable builds? What are the builds we think would be cool? What are the ones that are just really iconic and maybe aren't good because there's no items for them? Cool, let's make items for them.
Yeah, I definitely like the design theory of the new one. I'm not a big fan of Marauders just because I like to do the pew-pew myself. Yeah. Just putting on a bunch of turrets and having them kill stuff while I stand back, it just doesn't feel demon huntery to me.
I think, I agree. I personally enjoy turret gameplay. However, I don't like the way Marauders worked out. It's a good example where we really started just purely from a strong fantasy point, and then we said, all right, cool, let's do that. And then afterwards we're like, yeah,
what have we done?
It works, but the gameplay could have been better. Okay, let's make sure that we don't want to nerf it, right? We don't want to go, oh, demon hunters are too good and this is bad for them. So our solution is instead, okay, we'll make something even better that's way more fun, and then everybody wins. And if you still want to do the turret thing, you can do the turret thing.
I wonder if Marauders had like a 50% damage penalty. So like it was good, but you couldn't get above like GR 35 or something. If there'd be people who really just like that gameplay style, like they played Assassins and Traps in D2 or something.
Right, yeah.
And like, would people still like it if it wasn't by far the most powerful build in most ways?
Oh, absolutely. I think there would be some people who that gameplay style would appeal to. But I don't think...
Maybe we'll find out in the next patch. It won't be by far the most powerful.
We'll see. I don't know. Come PTR time, we'll be getting a lot of feedback, I'm sure. And as always, we'll iterate based on that.
What's our time here?
You got 5 minutes.
Okay. A couple about Riffs. One of the things, this is sort of no, I have to plug my one thing I have to complain about first.
Okay.
Controls. I'm one of those people who almost doesn't play a melee character anymore because I just hate having to put a skill on the left click. If it's on the right click, you can just hold down the right click and it'll auto-acquire targets. And that worked really well in D3 vanilla, but now we're in this sort of the game where, the old days it was like you did lots of charge ups and then you spent all your spirit with one punch with a monk, for instance.
Okay.
And that's kind of not the gameplay anymore. There's so many ways to regen stuff now that you can. The thing I would just like to be is if you could just put force move on left click and then have 5 hotkeys on the keyboard and your right click. That's all I want. I don't want any magical different changes. I just hate having to go left to move, to open chests, to do everything. And you try to run through a pack and you're automatically clicking stuff by accident. When it's not the gameplay anymore, it doesn't really require you to do lots of the left clicking to build up your boost in the first place. I bitched to Wyatt and Josh about this last year, and Wyatt was like, I understand this, but there's reasons we can't do it.
I would repeat what Wyatt said, but I don't know what he said. But I will generally echo his sentiment. The control scheme is more or less how it is for a reason. More than anything, when I listen to that bit of feedback, my concern would be, why aren't you using your basic attacks? and if you find that the game
I use them, but I want them on the right click.
You want your basic attacks.
Yeah,
on the
that's
right
how I
click.
usually would do it. Like for instance, in Wave of Light was a good build in D3V, and I would just have right click would be, you know, whatever was the teleporting lightning, Fists of Lightning, Fists of Thunder, whatever it's called, the one that everybody used and was the main, and that was my right click.
Fists of Thunder.
Fists of Thunder, yeah. And that was just my right click, and the left click was Wave of Light, and so you'd build up Spirit, and then you just do a couple of, you know, shift left clicks to target it wherever you wanted, instead of having to click it on a monster directly. And you'd spin, and then you'd run around and make a bunch of right clicks again to build it up. But the right click, you just hold down the mouse and move it around, and it auto-acquires when you point at a monster. But it doesn't auto-acquire on chests. You don't pick up garbage off the ground. You don't accidentally click something and run towards it. It only goes where you're pointing unless you're pointing at a monster.
Honestly, I really can't give you a good answer for that. I have done nothing in regards to work on controls.
So who can I blame for this? Is it Wyatt's fault? Because there's story time with Wyatt tomorrow, and I can harangue him.
You are free to ask Wyatt
Okay,
about
good.
this tomorrow and see what he has to say.
And one other, okay, get to the Riffs thing I wanted to ask. A bunch of people asked about Riffs.
Okay.
So Riffs are cool, but there's the people
4
often
minutes
people
or
often
something.
suggest a little bit less randomness. It's funny because the Riffs in the demo here are not random. But people often say it would be cool if we had a way to compete for best times on a specific Rift. Say Rifts level 10, 20, 30, 40. You had a leaderboard just for best times on that Rift, instead of leaderboards only being your best Rift as a character. Like people are like, they want to do it like the whole finish the game in an hour thing, where you could actually gear and say, okay, I'm just going to do Greater Rift 20 or equivalent difficulty of Greater Rift 20, and I'm going to put all my fastest gear on. I'm going to try to do it in 4 minutes, and your friend would be able to, oh, I'm going to do it in 350 now, that kind of thing. We would actually have like a mini esport kind of thing or competition, just on a specific set of content with a timer, instead of the whole randomization, which is great in some ways, but people actually want to compete. And the other related thing is people say, why can't we do Rift racing? Where there's 4 of us in the game, we all get the exact same Rift, you know, all solo player, and then we just race through it simultaneously, and we see who gets the best time.
Those are both interesting ideas. The second one is actually something that we have talked about at work. I think it's really cool myself. I agree. I think it would be really cool to go. There was a game I played where oh gosh, what was it called? I have floating castles.
That's every game, though.
Damn it.
Sorry,
Floating
that's every
castles that
anime.
a player owned. No, Mighty Quest for Epic Loot. We talked about one of our favorite things from that game is that I could challenge my friend to a castle, and it was always the same layout, and we would basically be racing each other back and forth to see who could like get the lowest time. And every time someone would win, it would notify the guy like, Joe Shelley beat your time. And then it would notify him, like, Travis Day beat your time, and we went back and forth for like a week.
Lawrence Day beat your time.
Nope, Travis Day. So it's a cool idea. It's something that potentially down the road we could look into, maybe trying to find a way to do. We don't have anything like that necessarily right now, but I agree. It sounds awesome.
Okay, last question is short. Any thought about making rares viable in-game stuff? People have often said, what if we could have rares that had up to 5 or 6 primaries? And obviously they'd be much lower numbers than the legendaries. As it is, rares, once you're well geared, they're just garbage. You don't even look at them. Have you guys considered making rares a viable thing, or crafting stuff?
I think that all items eventually, the more powerful your player becomes, lower tiers of items absolutely are things you're not going to equip. I think that's better than if you suddenly felt like every yellow that dropped you had to pick up and ID, and well, not ID anymore, but pick up and look at. I think the best thing we can do in that scenario is make sure that you have a use for those, which is, predominantly through crafting, whether it's enchanting or making new armor. And I promise once we have ancient items, you're going to be trying to craft a lot more gear to get ancient versions of everything. So
you can get ancient versions of crafted stuff too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, interesting. And also Kadala and also drops.
Yeah, so that's going to make you want a lot more crafting materials than you probably have right now.
There are ancient sets as well, I assume? Ancient set items?
Ancient can be everything that is legendary. Yep.
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot. This is Diablo IncGamers, and sign off, Travis. Moo.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
There's no Caleb.
Well,